Okay, so we're live now.
All right,
Hello, everybody.
We are.
we're live. Yep.
Okay.
So,
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, I see it. I see it. Okay.
all right, let the after church tea time begin.
Oh, I think we are live.
Okay,
Um,
so we're live now.
We're
Hey
live.
everyone, welcome to After Church Tea Time. Today we're going to discuss the Sunday sermon on Black Lives Matter, and Jeff and Shalia speaking about the differences between cultures, black and white, in North America mainly, and the point of view for the white community. So I want to ask, like, how are you guys feeling about the sermon today?
Well, I was thinking, looking at this room and how what a diverse, not only racially but across the world. Everyone wants to just say their name and maybe where they live. People can get a sense of the different perspectives we have here.
Deji here, Queens, New York.
Okay, I'm Granville Campbell. I'm from South Africa, Johannesburg.
I'm Noreen, and I grew up in the French Caribbean, and I live in France now.
And I'm Daniel, and I live in Michigan from Michigan.
I'm Deanna, and I grew up in Wisconsin, and now we're living in Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess one thing I want to add too, I spent 12 years in New Orleans, so I think that's where, like, as far as this topic goes, I have the most experience, like living in a really diverse area. So,
yeah. I think it's really cool that we all have experiences with in or within Black communities, but at the same time, like, they're different because we're from different parts of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess personally, this sermon still speaks to me because I realize that I'm very grateful to have been raised in the Caribbean, because you have that privilege sort of to learn about European history and North American history and slavery and everything in between, because we have a lot of like cultures and communities. Like, we have Black, white, Native American, Indian, and my grandparents are really a mix of everything. And yeah, it's given me like a big picture on the different cultures, I guess, including mine. And it's really interesting, and I think it goes really well with this sermon, because I think you can talk about Black and white communities and racism without having an open mind and being compassionate and understanding.
Yeah. So yeah, growing up in South Africa has been quite interesting, obviously, from just the kind of diversification of the racial groups and, you know, the cultural mix of people. So it's interesting, and it's also quite sad on a level, because there's progress, and then in certain instances there's also kind of a feeling of a lack of progress. So I feel like sometimes we kind of discount somebody else's experience because we haven't seen it. And the lens that they then see life through is obviously different, because it's clouded by the experience, it's influenced by the experience. So it kind of comes back down to, well, actually, can I discount somebody else's experience because I haven't lived through it? My reality is not theirs. So I can mention a couple of examples of having seen racism in action. I spent a lot of time in human resources within a corporate, and a lot of the work was around inclusion and diversity. And actually, valuing the differences as opposed to ignoring the differences, because it gives you the diversity of the perspective, and it gives you the diversification of the opinion, so that you make a better decision as a corporate.
Mm.
Yeah, it's true. It's like, oh, did you want to say something, Deji?
Yeah. Where do I start with this? When it comes to my experience, I kind of caught on to, as a Black man living in America, I caught the existence of racism a little bit later, because as a child, I grew up as, a latchkey kid. In case you don't know what a latchkey kid is, that someone who is pretty much at home until their parents come home, and you can actually, talk and stuff like that. So, I really just grew up, watching television and, getting into the arts and stuff like that. I wasn't really outside playing and, getting the actual experience of what's going on outside. I caught it on later when I was in high school, because I've had a few, I would say a couple of instances when it comes to, I guess, systemic racism. The first time, should I get into this now? All right, yeah, I'll get into it. Okay, the first time I experienced it, I was in high school. I was 17 years old. This was in my senior year of high school. I had the privilege of, no, actually, I would say I had the opportunity of graduating early from high school. So being that I had the opportunity to do that, I wanted to stay longer so I could experience, the senior activity, stuff like that, senior trips and, dress up day and shit like that. So throughout my senior year, I would just go through half days. So I would leave earlier than a lot of people in, in my grade. So in this experience, I was leaving school, and there were these two kids in front of me who were walking in front of me. And I mean, I didn't really experience anything. I was just, going home, had my books in my hand, and this cop just rolled up on me. And I experienced the, stop and frisk. I didn't know what was going on. He just asked me about a fight happening after school, and I was lost. I said, "What made you think that I knew about a fight happening after school?" And the thing is that the two kids who were in front of me, who happened to be Caucasian, were leaving the same school where I was leaving. So that was my first experience. And the second experience, I'm not gonna get into. It's not relevant, but yeah, I can say I have experience firsthand when it comes to, racism in North America, systemic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that, especially like moving to north of France. That's where I experienced a lot of like systemic racism. And it really like struck me what Jeff and Julia said in the sermon, because I experienced it like firsthand, like when you try to fight the cops because you know that you are innocent and that you're right. You're touching a deep hurt that all the communities has had for like a few centuries, I guess. Whereas when you're just like trying to have a discussion with them, be open, like be surrendered, be humble. In my experience, they're kind of surprised, like, and I think it's because they're trained to have this racial profiling. And when I don't fight and I actually see them as human and with compassion, they act surprised, but because they expect me to fight. And so, and when I don't do that, it feels much better for us both, because at the end of the day, there is no like color, there is no uniform, and we're all humans. And I mean, like violence, we don't really want to like experience violence like every day in our everyday life. We just want to have normal lives, of course. And sure, it doesn't really apply to the experiences with, of people getting murdered by the police. Like, it's not excusable, but in this little like experience of racism in our everyday life, I think it helps for everyone to go into it with less anger and with more love and compassion. And it's not always easy, but like sometimes the energy that you put into it makes a big difference. I don't know what you guys think about it, but yeah.
Yeah, I think for me that the energy is an important thing, because I also find that if I operate from the perspective of it's a fight, or I envisage a fight or anticipate a fight, it always generally ends up in a fight. It doesn't matter whether it's with police, whether it's with other people, whether it's just in a conversation. If I feel animosity in that situation towards a person, it is always reflected. It always happens in that way. So the minute I take a step back and go, okay, I want to understand your perspective, I find that people are also more willing to understand my perspective, to understand and listen, because I think most of us want to be heard. And in being heard, we feel like we have arrived in a certain way. And I think that's where the kind of the friction comes in, is that when we're not listening, we're also not allowing the other person to feel heard, which is often the thing that most people want, regardless of whether they have power, regardless of whether they're wearing a badge, regardless of whether they're sitting in a position of authority or not. It's actually it's the respectful thing of listening, hearing, and then also being heard and listened to that works. And I find that always works.
Thank you, Gabriel.
I see a comment from Lisi. It says, I would like to know how the group feels about what Jeff and Shalia shared about respecting authority of police, how to resolve this within yourself. If you or someone you know has experienced racism, experienced police brutality or racism, can you speak to how you would feel, how you would heal anything coming up here? I want to hear from you guys. I want to go last with that.
Okay, so I'll go. I think part of what I was talking about in my previous comments is around respect. And one of the things that experiencing that kind of brutality does is it lowers your respect vibration, which generally also lowers your own respect for yourself, because you have the sense that you weren't worthy of the respect, or you weren't good enough for the respect. And I feel like sometimes, yes, that person doesn't apologize. But at the same time, if I sit in that space and I apologize to myself in the space where I'm hurt, I feel that the energy draining me and keeping me stuck there generally dissipates. So I'm freer to see the experience for what it was, just a negative experience. It doesn't say anything about me as a person. And we often internalize those kind of things. which is where our healing needs to happen, is that internalization of your worthiness and your enoughness and your humanness, because sometimes you actually feel dehumanized. So it's going back into that space of, well, actually, I'm worthy of taking up the space of being a human on this planet at this time, and I deserve to be here.
Mm.
I personally have a lot of respect for the police. This may seem like some controversial or maybe sensitive for some people, especially at this time, but I think like I was never too keen on going in protests or demonstrations, because it's often like the place where there's an excess of violence and where we see, I guess, the system, the violence that is inherent to our systems and societies. But I think like the police is such an important part of our society, and not just for crime, but also for borders, for security. And I I don't really know how to say it, but like I don't really agree with like people saying like, ACAB. I don't know if you know, like all cops are bastards or something, because like it's not like the uniform that does the job, like it's the human behind it. And I think there are a lot of good cops, and yeah, I don't know. What's your opinion on it, like Cedric?
Okay. My opinion on this is going to be a bit long-winded, and it's actually something that I want to address what Jeff said. Okay, where do I start this? I want to speak on this, I want to speak from this on, and it's not going to be on a spiritual level. This is going to be from what I've seen. And this is actually something I healed the block with Lisi. And it's actually going to, according to something that Granville said, when it comes to respect and feeling your worth. I've seen that the criminal justice system has it out a bit for the African American community. And this is me speaking from a Black man in North America. I feel that the justice system has it out for the African American community, which is why you see that African Americans are the highest population in the incarceration system. And it's for the silliest things, And also, going back to what Jeff said when it comes to African Americans, communicating with the police, and he did say he's open to be very wrong. I feel that there's so much complexity that goes in with that situation, because it's not always just, respecting and listening and respecting their authority, listening to what they have to say, because there's so much more that goes into it with that. And I want to give thank you, Shalia. So I want to give two examples for, when it comes to an African American experience and a Caucasian experience. And the first one I'm going to give is through, I would say, a child's experience, because the child is very innocent and they don't know exactly what's going on. So, 4 years ago, I don't know if you guys know about this. Do you know about a man named Philando Castile? Do you know who that is? Granville, Urine? Do you know who that is? No?
No, I
Okay.
don't.
Okay, so there was this man named Philando Castile. 4 years ago, he was driving around with his daughter and his girlfriend, and they're driving around and they got pulled over by a cop. And within 40 seconds of this interaction, these two cops who happen to be Caucasian killed this man. And it was all because this cop profiled this man and his kid and his daughter looking like they were leaving from a robbery. That's what they're saying in their, that's what they said in the body cam. And yeah, they killed this man in front of his girlfriend and in front of his daughter. This little girl was 4 years old. It happened right in front of her. She saw she saw a man who is supposed to be respected in society and supposed to be an authority take her father away from her, and nothing happened to this man. And it sucks because now, along with what Granville said, she's going to grow up not feeling respected and not feeling worth because the person who's supposed to protect her took her father away from her, and nothing happened to this man. This man did not go to jail. He wasn't charged, nothing. And that sucks. And the crazy thing is, a year later, a similar situation happened to a Caucasian woman. A Caucasian woman, her name was Justine Demond. She was killed by a police officer by accident, similar to Philando's situation. And because this officer was Black, this man got charged for 12 years in prison. So you have to look at it from a child's eyes. And I don't know if Justine had any kids or any younger relatives, that's not relevant, but in a child's eyes on a Caucasian experience, what they saw was a bad man did something bad to my family member or my cousin or whoever this relationship was to this woman, and justice was served. And I felt, and what they feel is I feel protected because the justice system took this man off the street, so I feel safe. So what Philando's daughter is experiencing is a bad man took my daddy and nothing happened to him. So she doesn't feel protected and she doesn't feel worthy. And that fucking sucks.
And and I think that the thing that scares me in that sense is the lens is basically muddied now. So no other good or healthy experience generally filters through, because actually what has happened is this is always looking through it. This is all we're looking at through. We're not seeing or allowing that possibly there's good in the world. Possibly that was a bum experience. Possibly that actually that was not a great person and it wasn't a great experience for me, but that does not mean that everybody does that. And that doesn't mean that everybody is that way. And I think that is what I find is so loving about the mirror exercise, is because you actually heal that part and you start to see the good in the world. You start to see that there's beautiful in the world. You start to believe in the beauty in the world again. And I think that is the thing that if we can do anything else, that is the only thing that we actually need to do, is to bring kids back to that beautiful innocence of believing that there's good in the world and good can happen for me and I am worthy of that good. And that is why I love this work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also to what you said, Irene.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is a complex situation where we have a mix of our individual choices with a society built on years of abuse and exploiting. And this is really like, it hurts to see that. And when you see this kind of things, and I think your reaction speaks to it, that you can help as a Black person, but feel powerless in a sense, like deprived of your choice and deprived of your sense of security. And that's the beautiful thing, is that by claiming back our choice and our power by the mere exercise, like you said, Granville, we claim back our power, we claim back our place in society, and we heal centuries of hurt and centuries of abuse. And the beautiful thing is that it's getting better, and our voice we are being heard by the Black Lives Matter movement. And when you heal this hurt in you can actually see that, and you can actually see that it's going to be better, and we are going to heal this, and we are raising awareness.
But the thing is, how do you explain that to a 4-year-old? Yeah, that's the thing. How do you explain this to innocence? We're adults. We see this. How are we going to explain this to a 4-year-old?
Well,
we just got her father taken away from her over an accident, and nothing happened.
Well, it's already complex. It's already a complex thing to. It's already a complex thing to explain this to adults and to open up the discussion. But I think when you speak on the level of love and spirituality, we are souls before being in human bodies, and we understand, like, when I was a child and I saw that people from the Caribbean were treated as second-based citizens compared to Europeans, I understood that. I understood that injustice, and I had that desire for justice, and I found answers in spirituality and love and discussion. She's a child, of course, and she should never have had that experience, but she has as much power as you have to understand the situation, and she can claim her power and be a voice in the world, be a voice for justice and be a voice for healing, because she's as much a spiritual being as we are. And she feels everything that we feel, whether it be hurt or love. And yeah, it's never gonna be easy. And this conversation always gonna be uncomfortable, but we need to have them. And
I would like to echo what Yareen said in terms of children absolutely have power too. And for me, the maximum healing that happens is not at an individual level. Because the minute you heal at an individual level, and you can take the power of that message and the power of that healing out into the world, you heal at a collective level that actually says to the world, yes, I had a crappy experience. Yes, it wasn't good. But guess what? I am strong. I am powerful. And I have been enriched even by a bad experience. And I can now go and help somebody else in their bad experience and heal them in their bad space. So yes, it's not great. And you're never going to be able to explain this to a child. But a
Yeah.
child has the heart of an angel. And they love to see the good. And they love to bring the good to the world. And all we need to do is get out of their way sometimes.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. And I want to say something lastly. This is something that's happened recently that I'm sure a lot of people have seen. So, with the COVID-19 quarantine, there were I'm not going to say, yeah, I will say there were two different sets of protests. The first protest that happened, I'm not sure if you guys saw this on the news, there were these certain groups of Republicans who happened to be, Caucasian. And also, there were Trump supporters. There were, having the Trump banner saying Trump 2020 and, this and that. And during this, silly protest, what they were protesting is their right to, kill the city's quarantine just to get a haircut or get their nails done and, stuff like that. So still silly things. And they were walking and protesting outside with AR-15 weapons. And in case you guys don't know what an AR-15 weapon is these were the leading weapons that were used they were the #1 leading weapons in mass school shootings. And these were the same weapons that killed innocent teenagers while they were in school trying to, find themselves and learn. But yeah, these people were marching outside with AR-15 weapons, and apparently they were getting praised for it. I mean, some people were laughing at it, but they've gotten praised for exercising their amendment right. And then I would say like a month or two later down the line was when the actual Black Lives Matter movement went international. And these people were called animals, they were called thugs, and they got the military sick on them because they were, what's the word I want to look for? For pretty much being labeled as that, as thugs and animals. And it's kind of, I would say it's kind of messed up how that happened, because, peaceful protesting, and you got, people getting threatened, beaten, a couple people were killed actually during these protests, but yet, you had this really asinine and dumb other protests where people were marching outside with weapons that possibly could have taken or has taken their child away from them while they were in school, and they got praised for it. They weren't called animals, they weren't called thugs, but they were praised for it. But yet when it comes to actually standing for something in the Black Lives Matter movement, they were called animals and thugs. And it's not really, it's a really blurred line. And that's something I didn't understand. But I feel that God brought this COVID-19 to us to show us how divided people's mindsets are. Yeah, that's what I have to say about that. That's the last thing I have to say about that. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we can't deny anymore that history and the marks of history are still there in our society.
Absolutely.
That's why the movement is as big as it is right now. And yeah, and as it was said by Jeff, like equal rights for Black people are from not so long ago. And for example, I know I'm in an interracial union with my twin flame, and I know a few people in the community are in interracial couples, and like 50 years ago, we couldn't be together, we couldn't be married legally.
Yeah, this actually became legal, what, like 60 years ago, a couple days ago, like it marked the actual date, like 60 years ago, that interracial marriage became unbanned. Yeah.
Yes, I just want to talk about a question that Lisi is asking. If we can possibly talk about how the white community can support Black people by standing aside and listening, and how does it feel to share, and what would you like the white community to know? So I actually want to kick it off by saying it's not about support. It's about listening. It's about understanding that the experience and the reality has been different. And so sometimes healing takes time. And sometimes that healing doesn't look like something we think is acceptable or not, because people act out. It's about understanding that the hurt is there. And accepting somebody's hurt means you're accepting them, and you're respecting their experience, and that humanizes them in and of itself. And I want to agree with you that COVID, I think, it's going to sound really odd, but I think it was the best thing that ever happened to us.
Absolutely.
For the reason that things were not working in the reality that we're living in. We need a new reality. And so, because we're all forced to sit down and pay attention to what is actually happening, we just start to see the significant disconnect between opinions and people and just lives in general. And privilege comes in many forms. I'm colored South African. There are certain things as a colored South African I haven't experienced, but there are certain things that other colored South Africans have. And that goes across all racial groups. Some people experience the awfulness of the extreme on one hand, and some people experience the greatness of the extreme on the other hand. And those gray lines in between is the space that brings us all back together once we start to heal those extremes. So I think COVID, as much as we complain about it, was a great leveler. We all had to sit down and pay attention.
Yeah.
I totally agree, and I'm gonna add on that, and then I'd like to hear from Daniel as well, what he has to say about it. But I think for the white community, remove the guilt, because guilt does not serve anyone. I think in my experience in France, guilt has either pushed white people to try and put history under the rug, like, and brush it off, saying that what their ancestors did was not what they were, and not saying that some of the social structures are directly from what our ancestors lived. And on the other side, it has pushed some people to, I guess, empathize with the hurt of people of color. And I think what guilt does as ego, because this is really ego, is keeping us in a loop of anger. And that is how that doesn't serve anyone. So open up the discussion, yes, and remove the guilt, remove the bandage of hurt. Just listen, just learn, just educate yourself. But I think that's all we are truly asking for. Yeah, that's what I have to say.
Yeah. I think it also comes to also acknowledging what is happening in reality and not being so blind to it. Like, I understand that some people can say, like I saw in the service, I forgot who said this. Someone said that they don't see color; they just see us all as one human race. Like, I understand that when someone can say that. However, that's also contributing to the problem because you're not really acknowledging what is, happening. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I think that the acknowledgement it's always important, and it's not about making somebody feel guilty for your experience. It's actually about acknowledging that this was the space I was in. This is what I experienced. Please respect that I did not have a similar reality to yours, and let's move along from there. Let's find our common ground. Let's find the space where we're actually just human together. Because that's really what it is. If we can all accept that we're just human together, we could almost discount the fact that actually I'm probably five tones darker than you. It doesn't make a difference because we are human together.
Yeah, I'll share something to that. One thing that's been wonderful to just hold space and hear what everyone had to say. It's
Yeah,
really
thank
powerful.
You so much.
It's bringing me back to really my time in New Orleans. I was a part of a church where, so Katrina happened, and Katrina, kind of like COVID, was a leveling experience. White or black, it happened to everybody, right? And so after the storm, the church I was a part of, before, the churches were segregated, and then after, for the most part, and then after Katrina happened, the church I was a part of brought, by their own choice, a black and a white church came together and decided to live as one and just figure it out together. And it was just such a, like you said, a beautiful experience for me to be able to spend 12 years just growing alongside people with a very different life experience. And it was vulnerable for everyone because I know that the Black members had a feeling of like, am I going to be safe in this church now with white people? Can I be myself? But we decided to try it. And it was like what you said, Granville. I mean, we made sure we made space for each other. Our experiences weren't the same. And to hear, like, we would make sure to take time to listen to each other's experience. Like, one thing we noticed is that, like, Black people in New Orleans were more likely to have been affected by violence than white people, were more affected by prejudice or poverty. And to see that the life experience was different. But then as we kept getting to know each other, we just became church members, right? We became people who loved each other, gathered every Sunday. And
it was important to like acknowledge that first.
Yes.
Like you guys were saying.
The first healing was to acknowledge that, we need to really listen to each other. Because we were not coming into this church experience from the same life experience. And I'm just so grateful. I'm just so grateful that, like, I opened myself up to listening. I'm grateful that I did that today, because I grow so much by holding space. So
Yeah, thank you so much. I felt this was a very like humbling sermon and humbling after church tea time.
yeah.
And I felt called to just listen. And that's exactly what we're meant to be doing right now. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, I love what you said, Daniel. And that could be a part of maybe the beginning of a response to racism is like first acknowledging that we've had different experiences. And then on top of that, saying that ultimately we're just all human and yeah, like that we are one in society, but that oneness is a mix of our unique expressions and our just our unique selves. So thank you. Okay, so does anyone have something to say, and then I think we can wrap this up.
So the one thing I do want to share that's always worked for me is I've never seen a masterpiece that only has one color in it. If you can show me any piece of artwork that only has one color in it, I will eat a hat. I have seen a masterpiece painted in colors of the rainbow. And here we sit in colors of the rainbow and we complete the picture. So I'm just saying, let's complete the picture that we're meant to complete, guys.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah. My last comment, exactly. That's what my church demonstrated. It became one of the most popular churches in New Orleans for people to visit because it was so alive. People it was so alive because something new was being created. The music was the most incredible music, maybe a little biased, of any church in New Orleans. It just had such a spirit to it. I think that as we heal together, we're going to discover that like we have a beautiful new song to like write together
And
from all of our experiences.
This discussion right here is the power of unionism. It's a really amazing thing.
Yeah. Thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amen.
Yeah, it was a really good discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. That was really good.
Awesome.
And on that note, thank you for watching the After Church Tea Time, and we'll see you next Sunday. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.